Good afternoon and welcome to this special edition of the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 16 years of profiling IT mission programs in the federal government. This is our first annual Profiles in Excellence Chief Data Officer program, which will be coming to you from the virtual studios of WTOP and the Federal News Network. I'm Luke McCormack, and during today's show, we will discuss big data analytics and artificial intelligence trends and strategies at numerous government agencies and hear from the key leaders making them happen. With me on today's show are Mike Horton, Chief Data Officer, Department of Homeland Security, Tom Sasala, Chief Data Officer, Department of Navy, Nitesh Manikoff, Chief Data Officer at the FAA, Alan Jacobson, Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Alteryx, Nick Saki, Principal Technology Strategist at Pure Storage, and Nicholas Spees, Chief Federal Technologist at Snowflake. Well, I couldn't think of a more timely subject of data analytics and artificial intelligence, and who better to talk about that than the Chief Data Officer community and certainly our partners that are helping us out here. OMB has set the table, got good guidance from the Hill. It's time to light it up. Let me start with you, Mike. You just entered on duty there in regards to the Chief Data Officer position. Give us a state of what you're seeing over there. What direction are you getting? Sort of what's the strategy?
Well, thanks, Luke. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we're doing. We're excited. It's been a lot of discovery. We've been doing our best to get an inventory going, to find out what we have to work with. But the really good news at DHS is that there's been a lot of really good data work happening down at the components. We don't have to really reinvent anything. It's more of a collection exercise. It's more of an opportunity to learn about the great data products and great data products opportunities that are happening down at our 22 components. It's a really diverse mission at DHS, and data helps us in so many ways. And the good news is, like I said, it's already happening. We're collecting data on emergency management from FEMA. We're collecting data on immigration statistics from USCIS. We are collecting buoy and weather data from the U.S. Coast Guard. And our goal here at the enterprise level is to make the most use of that data to ensure that it's being secured and shared to its potential. And most importantly, to make sure we follow guidelines that have been set by both at the federal level and at the component level, to make sure we're paying real close attention to privacy, real close attention to our mandate to protect the data that we need to, and to push the data back out to the citizens that own that data. So our real focus right now, Luke, is to get data products up to leadership to make good decisions, and to push good data down to the operator so they can do their mission.
Fantastic. Sounds like you're off to a great start there, and congratulations on the appointment. Tom, how about over at the Department of Navy? There's a lot of activity going on over there. I know you've got a lot of moving parts. Tell us about the state of the state at the Department of Navy.
Sure thing. So it's not very dissimilar to what Mike is actually experiencing over at DHS. And, we've been working on this now for about 2 years continuously. We're in the process of actually writing our annual report to Congress. So that's a good way for us to kind of step back and look at what we said we were going to do and actually inventory what we did, and then set ourselves up for the next calendar year. So over the last year or so, we really pushed hard on a data catalog. We got the basic infrastructure in place for not only doing that inventory of data that Mike mentioned as well, but also setting ourselves up for inventorying the digital services that we're going to go after as part of our data portfolio. And so what I mean by that is we're really trying to move as a Department of the Navy to shared enterprise services as much as we can. So where there is analysis happening, how do we empower our workforce, our sailors, our Marines, and our civilians with tools to do their job? And, we had the former undersecretary set the bar, saying the tools that we're providing to our workforce have to be as easy to use as what they have today. And so that kind of sets the bar at the PowerPoint or Excel level in terms of ease of use, which is good, right? The challenge is how do you extract as much value out of the data as you can by giving some very basic tools, and then empowering that maybe 5% or 1% of the workforce with the power tools that they need to do their job. And so We've been working hard on use cases. We have a number of really compelling use cases supporting fleet forces in terms of readiness and ship preparedness and aircraft maintenance type data. And we've also, obviously, I think with a lot of the federal CDOs have been digging in on the COVID data, supply chain challenges, and some PPE things there. That seems like the gift that keeps on giving, in my opinion. And then, lastly, we really have been working very closely with the Undersecretary, the former one and the current acting Undersecretary on performance management. So how do we start using data in the Department of the Navy to drive performance, make decisions, measure their outcomes, and then react to what we're seeing in terms of the decisions that are being made? And that really is a seminal moment for the department because thus far, kind of broadly, we haven't really used data for true decision-making purposes beyond what I would consider the more tactical kind of warfighting sort of aspects. So that's exciting, and we're looking forward to where we're heading and looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, no doubt that we're talking about this higher order decision-making, whether it's at the leadership level all the way down to the sailor level, giving them these fantastic tools to make that happen. Nitesh, how about over at FAA? You all are on a journey over there. With next gen and everything else going on, and that data analytics so important at the FAA.
Very true, Luke, and good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this. It's both a pleasure and a privilege. Haven't had this opportunity to have this conversation in a year or so. As both Mike and Tom mentioned, the story is not very dissimilar. I fortunately have had a couple more years to work on it. The main effort at the agency, obviously, in simple terms, is improving decision intelligence for everyone, everywhere within the agency. And a key focus of that is trying to get to as much self-service, as much rapid deployment, so that we can enable everybody throughout the agency to use data. The past couple of years, we have been able to put a few enterprise capabilities together. So obviously we do have a cataloging capability, which we deployed a couple of years ago, slowly building on that and improving the catalog and the quality of the data that folks have access to. We have a cloud-based data platform, an enterprise data platform that everybody can leverage, that we have been consistently adding curated data assets to. We also have been pushing for, as I said, self-service capability. So we have better tools and training for the workforce in general. All of this is in the context of supporting and aligning with the agency's priorities for improved safety, improving the operational excellence throughout the FAA. And as we go through, we'll cite some examples and continuing global leadership in aviation and aerospace. So in terms of the machine learning, big data trends, recently we do see a greater adoption of natural language processing and geospatial analytics, which are core to many of the things which we do. But as the technologies mature and improve in NLP, more use cases are opening up, and I'm looking forward to having further conversation on some of those things.
More data, more technology available to create these use cases and get it down to self-service type thing. Keep hearing that. Alan, how about at Alteryx? First of all, tell us, how do they fit into this picture? You all have a real opportunity to stripe across these agencies in the private sector, et cetera. Tell us where you fit in and what you're seeing there.
Thanks again, Luke. A great group of people that you have on the phone. We actually have the privilege of working with each of their agencies as well as many others. And I think the trend, Nitesh just hit on it, this broad democratization of analytics is clearly a trend we see. And really what we see is a focus on upskilling, building data literacy within existing teams, and a push to really better democratize not just the data, but the analytics capability. And while there's a lot of discussion taking place around AI and ML, I think there's a hard-won realization that the foundational building block for any successful AI and ML strategy are really the domain experts, your knowledge workers, the majority of your workforce, to have data literacy, data wrangling capabilities, and the ability to understand when and how to leverage AI and ML. And that upskilling is absolutely where we're focused. We see some great examples. I'll give some maybe at some other agencies. A former military service member just recently said, just several years ago, he was in the Marine Corps and didn't know what a VLOOKUP was. And now he's an SME for a team of 10, starting with ML exploration. And within a month of using Alteryx, he was saving 25% of his time in data ETL. And he now works for a large defense contractor. At the State Department, they're using Alteryx, incorporating R and Python into workflows and really upskilling their staff to create more actionable insights. And at the state level, we've got states like South Dakota where their audit teams automating building blocks of their processes within their audit team. And they talk about Alteryx as being a secret decoder ring, allowing them to wade through a lot of complex data and get insights from it. A common pattern we see with AI and ML is this ability to get insight from large quantities of data. And the last one maybe I'll go with is one of our Navy veterans who just went through our what we call our ADAPT program, a training program. She'd gotten out of the military and had all of these skills, but didn't have a way of showing what she was capable of. And with that Alteryx certification, had a clear statement of what she could do with data and analytics. So really powerful seeing how it's upskilling people at that individual level, helping them maybe get to the next phase of their career. And within organizations like the FAA, like the Navy, Department of Navy, we're seeing some great outcomes.
Right, taking the challenge out of getting to the data and just really focusing on processing the data and turning it into information. Nick, how about at Pure Storage? A lot of activity going on over there. You all, again, see it from a unique perspective. Tell us what you're seeing out there. What are the customers telling you?
Hey, thank you, Luke. We continue to be focused on building the foundation to enable managing and processing the enormous quantity of data. As we said, data is the new oil, data is the new gold. It's a resource in tremendous availability, but refining that data to drive timely, relevant, accurate decision-making remains one of the core needs and frankly, one of the core challenges to modern infrastructure as well. So we're enhancing the tools, the hardware and software that are allowing organizations to focus on the processing, making the infrastructure invisible and self-driving, because it's one of the biggest things that we're getting out of a lot of organizations is the time that they're spending working on their infrastructure or beating it into submission isn't time spent on actually accomplishing the mission, developing the algorithms, processing the data, and arriving at decisions, and then deploying capability forward. So, the infrastructure needs to be basically a tool that invisibly or automatically, unobtrusively helps the data scientists and the end users ultimately obtain their objectives. Across the foundation of the infrastructure, we're seeing high performance object and file storage, which are really the data types that predominate in cloud and hyperscale environments, remain a key and essential capability for our customers and really remain a key tenet of our development. And then we've seen tremendous expansion in the demand for better tools, newer application infrastructure in the form of the growth of Kubernetes, and a tremendous growth in the development and deployment of artificial intelligence for actual production work across all fields: medical, intelligence and security, manufacturing, supply chain, you name it. If a human or a team of humans were developing solutions, monitoring situations, et cetera, then artificial intelligence is rapidly being deployed to augment and assist them or fully automate the process. So the need is for systems that allow people to get more work done and scale to support greater quantities of data.
And putting those building blocks together, maturing that technology so that the CIOs, as you said, don't have to wrestle with that. So important so that they can focus on these higher order value chain type operations and analytics, et cetera. Nicholas, how about at Snowflake? You're sort of up that value chain, if you will, in regards to the analytics. What are you seeing out there as all this data gets collected and everyone's trying to process it and analyze it and make good decisions?
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Good afternoon, and everyone at home. Good afternoon to you too. There's a lot of trends that we could identify and talk about, and my colleagues have done a great job of that already. I'll just add one more to that, and It's especially relevant in all of public sector, not just federal government, not just state governments, not even just public sector. It's all of everyone. And it's the need to share data and collaborate on data. Great example with the great folks we have here today. The FAA has to collaborate with NTSB. They have to collaborate with air carriers. They have to collaborate with the public and let us know where flight safety issues are. Bill of Rights for airline passengers. All of those things are issues that the FAA can solve, but can solve better if they have data from the NTSB, data from the air carriers, and if they're giving that data back to them. Same thing at DHS. DHS collaborates across all of its subcomponents, and they also collaborate with agencies outside of their own sort of cloud of influence. And the great thing about the government agencies is that you may have a very specific purpose, but you may have a shared mission with several agencies. So the biggest trend we're seeing is that agencies are collaborating and sharing data at a much higher rate than we've ever seen before, Luke.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not only at a much higher rate, but we're talking real time, right? When you talk all of these three agencies, you're talking real time data analytics here to be making these decisions. No question about that. Tom, how about giving us a specific program that you'd like to highlight that you've been working on over there at the Navy in regards to data analytics, artificial intelligence, et cetera?
Yeah, so we have a number of things going on. And I think probably the easiest thing to highlight is what we're trying to do for the enterprise, and then how that fits into maybe some of the things that Nicholas and Alan and Nick have mentioned actually as well. So we're working with OSD. OSD has this platform called Advana. It's the enterprise analytics for the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary of Defense. So we have a tenant inside that environment called Jupiter, which is our enterprise analytics for the Department of the Navy. We're trying to draw data in and make it available, readily accessible for all of our workforce, right? And so I just had a conversation yesterday actually with the folks in the C4I program on the tactical side about how do we push that analytic capability at scale down to the fleet as far to the edge as possible. And so there's some work that's being done right now. It's advanced engineering really around how do we more optimize our data storage in onboard ships, specifically the surface fleet, and provide analytics capability to the folks that are on this ship that maybe are not engaged in war fighting or kind of fires activities. And so what does that really mean for the fleet? What do they need? We're in the process of defining the kind of the requirements and how we want to structure that work that we're doing on the ship. And so it doesn't have a name yet in terms of our program, but what it is it's advancing the warfight through that operational advantage created through data and data analytics, right? And so the open question we're trying to wrestle with right now is, and Nick mentioned this, how do we get our infrastructure up to scale? How do we create the tools that are more useful across a broad range of things that are not highly specialized, so that we can apply them to future warfights that we can't predict now? And so that's kind of the challenge where we are in right now, is driving that innovation to a point where we don't have niche solutions deployed on 100 or 1,000 different platforms, but more general solutions that can be applied to 100 or 1,000 different problems as they emerge episodically inside of maybe a specific AOR, or in support of one of the COCOMs, or like CENTCOM or PACOM or something like this, right? So we want to make sure that we are providing the best skills. And I think it was Alan was talking about the folks that have these skills, they've learned them, and how do they capitalize on them? And that's really challenging for us. And that's one of the things that I want to focus next year on, is really that acumen, right? And so I would say taking those sailors and those soldiers and those folks that are forward deployed, drawing on their expertise in the form of their military experience and their experience supporting commanders, right? And then pulling them back into headquarters and educating us on what the commanders need, and then further empowering them by putting them back into the field. And so, like I said, the project doesn't quite have a name yet, but we're still trying to, figure out exactly how we want to organize our work in that area. But I think of all the things we're working on, the visualizing the data work that we've been doing, all the different use cases is really powerful. but really upscaling that workforce and integrating them with the data from the point at which they kind of join the force. And then as they, progress in their career, they're going to move up and up and up. And all they're going to want to do, right, is they're going to want more and more data. They're going to want more and more integrated data, and so I think that's going to be really powerful in the years coming. And so that's more of a much more strategic foundational element that I think is going to really, really have a high ROI when we get there.
Fantastic and interesting. I think it's the first time on the show that we've actually had this late breaking of news where we have a program that doesn't even have a name yet. Yeah. But certainly, the ability to put that power in the hands of those sailors is fascinating and incredible. We look forward to that. All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about data analytics and artificial intelligence, and got a fantastic group of CDOs. And we're talking about specific programs. I want to throw it over to you, Nicholas, at Snowflake, and tell us about a specific program you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. There's a lot of examples out there in the world, but I think probably the most prominent that I want to talk about is some of the COVID response work that Snowflake has been a part of. I hate to give COVID credit for anything in the modern world, but the reality is when we talk about data sharing, collaboration, and the government learning and the public learning from the government learning, COVID's probably the strongest example we have. I think a lot of the sort of stick that CDOs can wave around these days is as big as it is because of the great work gained by COVID. Snowflake has been an integral part of several states' response, and also a bit at the federal level on the research side, and also on the tracking of PPE, the tracking of case data. That data being able to be shared with the public allows transparency, which honestly, that's where trust comes from. If you're transparent about why you're putting legislation in place, or you're requiring a mask, or a vaccine works or doesn't work, data is the only way to achieve transparency, which is the only way to achieve trust. That kind of mentality where we have a lot of data being used for a great purpose, and then transparency and trust being built on top of sharing that data is always something worth highlighting, and COVID's a great example.
We've talked about COVID off and on this show over the last 15 months, so relevant. And as we mature as a community in regards to securing the data, analyzing the data, et cetera, I think it certainly is timely. Mike, let's talk about a specific program at DHS that you'd like to highlight. I know you just got on duty there, but you've been in that community for a while. There's a lot of focus on the various activities. What's sort of, in the hopper right now that you'd like to highlight?
Well, Luke, thanks for the question. And this is something near and dear to me. People talk about big data all the time. One of the things I'm fond of is little data, and where you can find some real synergy between different subsets of little data, and you bring that data together, and you can make a data product that matters. So Alan talked a little bit about data literacy. And Nick talked about tools, and then Nicholas talked about sort of bringing all that together. And then lastly, Nicholas was talking about COVID. So with all those things in mind, here's what happened. We had this COVID situation, and our Chief Readiness Support Officer, Tom Shalecki, and his deputy, Trey Watkins, they said, hey, we have a real property question. How much of our real property is relevant now? How much of it will be relevant as we move into the future? And what's the usage? What's the real usage? So we gave that group some tools. We gave them some data that they didn't normally have access to. And I'm specifically talking about network and login data. So they're meshing a small data set, little data, not big data. But they're using the tools, and they're taking physical security sensor data, meshing it with network activity data. And we have now a map of usage of all the buildings and real property in DHS. And they're using that data to make defined, specific decisions about leases, about square footage, about occupancy that we've never been able to do before. And to me, that's a real victory down at the program offices. Those guys are pioneers, and they and their team have put this entire concept to use for DHS and for federal government.
That's interesting that you say that. Again, a reference, a nexus to COVID, right? Because of the different operating model that we're working under now, right? And how important that is. and a different use case that you obviously is super important, something you probably wouldn't be thinking about. But a fantastic example. So thank you very much for that. Alan, how about over at Alteryx? Tell us about a specific program you'd like to highlight that you're working on across the spectrum.
It's impossible to pick just one, so I'm gonna try two. I'll do one. I'll do one federal and one state. So the U.S. Census, we've done a lot of work with them, and watching them automate some of their processes. They had a process where they were producing insights on economic indicators, and historically they had really a manual process where site inspectors were collecting survey data, and they had to manually collect it and compile it, analyze it every month. Really time consuming, and one that could have errors introduced because of all that manual process. And they took Alteryx and really took some new data sources. They now use satellite imagery to supplement that structured data, using machine vision and really automated data collection processes. They take tens of thousands of municipalities worth of data and run it through a full automation. And now they're able to really accelerate the speed to get that insight, improve the sample size of data, because now they don't really have to sample, they can use all the data, really increasing the granularity of that insight that they give out. And that creates more value for the people, the stakeholders that are using that. And one of the cool things here, again, is we see this ability to upskill, that these domain experts that have really deep knowledge of that process were able to do it themselves. And that's really exciting to see. And then one other example, since COVID hopefully is on its way out, the state of Florida, when their unemployment system really crashed under the weight of COVID, they used Alteryx to really take and unify all of that cloud-based collection that they had in Google Forms, actually, and automate that process, taking 76 different workflows and being able to carve through 2 million unemployment applications with greater speed and accuracy, and no longer having the system crash. And so whether it's that very kind of more tactical response to, in this case, a pandemic, or really up-leveling the levels of insight that an agency was giving, we see just huge impact at organizations really all over the world.
Yeah, great use cases there, and interesting concepts both on both commercial and public sector. Nitesh, how about at FAA? I read about a lot of different fascinating things that are going on over there. You want to highlight one program where you're using this data analytics, perhaps artificial intelligence, to further the program?
Yes, look, as you say, a lot of wonderful work going on throughout FAA, so it's hard to kind of zero in on one. Mike's example reminded me of an organization that is doing a couple of things, so let me kind of zero in on and highlight the work of our air traffic operations safety organization. So as you can imagine, they have a tracking system for tracking, reviewing, approving safety analysis. They call it the Safety Management Tracking System. It produces risk management documentation, supports the process itself for risk management, and allows for data sharing of the safety risk analysis across the national airspace. Now, for a safety critical operation such as ours, this is an area where human expertise is paramount, right? It's a very expert-driven domain, but machine learning and AI can augment such efforts. So to Mike's point, not all efforts are big data analysis efforts. So ATO, Air Traffic Operations Safety, undertook a project to use machine learning and advanced analytical techniques to improve the quality of the tracking data, so that they can identify gaps in the data. They can improve the consistency of the safety analysis for future projects. So another example, briefly, from the same organization kind of highlights how they are leveraging work which we have already done on all these, deploying these technologies. So we have, as I said, a large data environment, a data platform in the cloud. So ATO Safety was able to use this for a project called Aviation Risk Identification and Assessment, or ARIA. So it's a system, it's a collection of process and microservices that can be leveraged to analyze potential risks across a wide variety of air travel domains. They first focused on risk of encounters in the air. Now they are focusing on, so they are using machine learning to improve the events that they focus on versus just looking for compliance. They're identifying risk scores for potential safety events and focusing the limited availability of resources that we have from the human point of view on the higher risk items. Now they're taking it to the ground for ground movement of aircraft. They have an upcoming enhancement, which will look at controlled flight into terrain. So that team is actually leveraging the enterprise capabilities that we built in the best way possible. They're a great partner. They push the boundary. They kind of making us look for enhancements to the enterprise capabilities which we built. So these are a couple of examples in our main mission area for safety. There are dozens of examples in operational efficiency and so forth. Our DevOps operation is looking at predictive analytics to improve the technical operations, which again, COVID and the forced remote work has pushed the agency in those areas. But your request was for an example or two, so I'll stop there.
Right, and fascinating. Again, a first of small data, little data versus big data. But these are use cases that are real time and right in front of these operators, and super important. I think it's fascinating to highlight these cases. Typically, we talk about as you said, these larger type of lofty type of programs. So great examples by all of you. Nick, how about over at Pure Storage? Can you give us an example of a program you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. And this next one is in Tom's hemisphere. So the Naval Surface Warfare Crane, about 3 years ago, acquired a dedicated platform for doing artificial intelligence research. And subsequently, with the growth of that platform, they made it available broadly as an artificial intelligence high performance computing as a service platform in the Navy's high performance computing catalog. So we're seeing the expansion of the availability of artificial intelligence resources, and particularly the processing architecture for that, being deployed across entire services, which gives them resources on obviously unclassified and protected networks for supporting an entire range of literally every endeavor for machine learning and artificial intelligence applications. So we've been very proud to partner with Crane to continue to refine that and make it available and sustain it, of course.
Very important program, and I'm glad you're highlighting that, and for the good of the order. I want to talk about priorities. Tom, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk to us about, just give us your top 2 or 3 priorities there at the Navy that you're going to be focusing on this year?
Yeah, sure thing. So you know, it's interesting over the last couple of years, and not only my time in the Army, but also now in the Department of the Navy, the priorities are really starting to shift a little bit, right? So we're making a lot of progress in some of the more fundamental things. But for the next 12 months or so, we're really focusing in on inventorying our data, knowing where it is, knowing what it is, knowing what its sensitivity level is, what system it's in. And then more importantly, this is going to be the challenge, is knowing what systems talk to what other systems, so we know how the data flows throughout the environment. So that's something that we're digging in on now. That is actually an offshoot of a broader initiative that we're calling Supernova, which is a data rationalization effort. And so, you know, Nick mentioned the high performance computing environment. That's something we've been working with the Analytic folks over in the N7 on the Navy side. So they have this thing called the Analytic Master Plan, which is an attempt to kind of organize the Navy in terms of how we're going to do analytics at scale. And so that inventorying is going to be important to know, you know, where that data exists. And then that'll allow us to, you know, not only know what we have, but how to protect it properly, how to position it properly, make sure that the people that need it have access to it, ready access to it, right? And then also allow us to make sure that we're using authoritative data sets, or what we call originating data, rather than some sort of derivative data that has been, mucked with in some way or manner or fashion or form. So that cataloging effort and that supernova data rationalization effort are going to be really important to us moving forward. And then the next thing I think that we're really going to focus in on, make a big push on anyway, is really trying to communication and upskilling of the workforce through that acumen effort that I mentioned earlier. I think that's going to be really essential for us making progress. And so once we understand where our data is and what that data is, and maybe the cleanliness of it, the quality level of it, and typically we call it veracity, but really broadly, can we trust the data for decision-making purposes and to create that operational advantage, is an open question, right? So we've done some basic data maturity modeling right now, and out of a 5 or not near 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not unsurprising. The results are not unsurprising, but how do we start moving that needle? And so the last thing, again, I think I mentioned earlier, is just really starting to use data for performance management. And so that's going to be really important to not only look at ourselves very in a way that is very benign and say, let's just be honest about where we are in the story, and then start looking for those drivers, the levers that we can pull that are going to make the most impact. And so these creation of the driver trees that we're calling them, and finding of all the variables that we have, which ones are going to be the most impactful for the minimum amount, with the limited amount of resources we have. So how do we pull those levers? And so, I like Mike's mention of the little data versus the big data. A lot of this really is a little data problem, right? But when you aggregate across the scale of the Department of the Navy, in total, it's a big data problem. But that's why we want to really do distributed workforce. We want to push that down to the edge. We want to empower those smaller teams. I think it was Amazon just the other day, they call them 2 pizza teams, which I'm going to adopt that terminology.
There you go. Yeah. 2 pizza. We hear about that all the time. And
exactly.
Cataloging data, upskilling, super important. Alan, how about at Alteryx? Give us a top priority that you're focusing on this year.
Yeah, I mean, really this, as we talk about upskilling and democratization of analytics, the education aspect is such a key, and we're really doubling down in that area, trying to make that accelerate. So we've got a new program we just launched, Spark Ed. Will continue over the next couple of years to really lean into that, where we're helping agencies, we're helping businesses and universities go on this education mission to get people more capable of leveraging AI and ML. And so whether it's at an individual level, helping an individual reskill themselves for a new career path, or whether it's upskilling so that they're learning a skill in place within their current profession, and now they're able to handle more data literate sorts of things. This is really a huge focus. So we've got a no-cost approach where we provide our product capabilities as well as the education content to help individuals and organizations go on this journey. And I'm really excited to see kind of the impact. We're already at hundreds of campuses in nearly 40 countries, and watching kind of the explosive growth in that area is really exciting.
It's fantastic. We're putting a lot of very high-powered tools in the hands of these folks, and we need to make sure they're skilled to get the best use out of it. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about data analytics, artificial intelligence. We've got the chief data officers here with us and a bunch of the partners, and we're actually talking about priorities. Mike, I want to throw it over to you. Give us a list of top couple of priorities going on over at Department of Homeland Security.
Well, thanks, Luke. That's an easy one. I'll follow up on some of Tom's comments about inventory, and it sounds easy, it sounds simple, but for us, it's an engagement. It's not a data call. Our hope is to sort of learn where that data is and learn more about the data products that are being procured and worked and pushed up from each of those program offices and each one of those components, and sort of paint a picture about what good data is out there and how we can put it to use. with all due respect and apologies to John F. Kennedy, we continue to ask people not what they're doing to their data, but what their data can do for them. And when we ask that, we are always surprised in a pleasant way about how they think about data coming together, not just for their localized mission. And that's really where we come in at the enterprise level to say, look, we know you've been doing this work, great work for years in some cases, but think about it at a higher level. And think about if we had a place where you felt like you could put it safely. So I think that's our follow-up priority, Luke, is to give program offices and give components and give data owners a sense of trust that we're not going to take their data, we're not going to mistreat their data, we're not going to relieve them of their their need to protect it. Right? We're going to respect that, and we're going to use that data for good. I'll go back to something Nitesh said about mission intelligence, sort of increase mission intelligence. We want to do that. We want to increase mission intelligence and business intelligence with the data we have. We want to do our best to respect all that great work that's been happening down there, but we want to spread the word. So really, it's about inventory. It's about a culture of sharing. It's about recognizing that there are mission imperatives that go beyond local program offices, and go beyond local components, and that are DHS enterprise-wide. And we're going to champion those. We're going to listen. We're going to engage with our data owners and our customers to make the mission better.
Catalog, sharing, need to share, all super important activities, right? Basic table stakes, if you will, for some folks. They may think that, but certainly very important to take it to the next level. Nicholas, give us your top priority at Snowflake for the year.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. I think the biggest priority is for us to keep increasing what we call the data cloud. It's thousands of customers of Snowflake that are sharing and collaborating with data in the cloud, no matter what cloud. So Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, it doesn't matter. Wherever your data is, you can share and collaborate with other cloud providers and other customers and dependents on the cloud. The U.S. Navy, we talking on the show about where the data is and where it's going. The U.S. Navy is a very important part, but one part of an entire Department of Defense. And we've talked about things like JADC2, the Joint All-Domain Command and Control Environment, where this data will all arrive in one place so that we can keep track of everybody in a war zone better than we ever have before. We can better task assets. DHS never gets to be bored. Increasing the data sharing at DHS can only ever be a good thing. I've had the pleasure of working with DHS in the past and here at Snowflake. The FAA, I've been a pilot for 15 years. New projects like ADSB, new projects like bringing commercial drones and UAVs into the airspace. These are huge problems. They're going to take more than just the FAA, and data collaboration is probably the best way to do that. Other technology partners like Pure and Alteryx. Pure is everywhere high-speed storage and collaboration needs to go, and Alteryx is usually where any good data is being landed at and cataloged and analyzed. So Snowflake is hoping to build the data cloud out, continue working with our partners, and most importantly, our government partners to build capabilities into the Fed.
Well, you called out great examples there, a lot of high priorities. Nitesh, we just heard about the FAA. Give us your top two priorities for the FAA for this year.
So two priorities. Since we have established some basic enterprise capabilities over the past couple of years, last year we went to the FAA Management Board and requested that all the -1s within the agency assign data champions for their organizations. So for each line of business, each staff office, there's a person assigned as the data champion for that organization. We wanted somebody close to the mission who understood data and could speak to the leadership within that organization about importance of data, where the priority should be, what kind of enhancements they were looking for. So this coming year, we want to kind of push in further on that data champion stuff. And we are collaborating with those data champions across the agency to have built out data action plans, which improve outcomes within their mission. So that's priority one for us, is to enhance the ability all across FAA to use data effectively through a well thought out data action plan, which those organizations build themselves, but we support. We kind of ensure that it is uniform across the agency. The second one I have already mentioned, self-service to get use of data-driven decisions and improve data-driven decisions throughout FAA, and to get that self-service stuff going, we have to improve what we call data dexterity. Others call it data literacy. We just call it data dexterity. We are establishing a Center for Enablement for Advanced Analytics and Data. And data dexterity training, self-service is going to be part of it. We have started collaborating with some universities over the past few semesters. We have been working with GMU to have student projects supported by our SMEs. It benefits both parties. Obviously, it benefits the universities to give students real-world examples of data problems to work on. It gives us an access into the new workforce, as well as new thinking and energy within that. So that area of training, data dexterity, enabling folks throughout the agency to use data on their own with support from us, but independent of us wherever possible. Those are two key priorities for us this upcoming year, Luke.
Wow, I love that second one, that partnership with the universities and the students, and just give them a plethora of data and let them go. Nick Saki, how about at Pure Storage? Give us the top priority for this year.
So our top priority this year is in developing and expanding our investment and deployment of containerized technologies and tailoring capability for DevOps and DevSecOps, which are core to artificial intelligence and machine learning operations in organizations, as well as, of course, data analytics. Containerization is fundamentally transforming the way in which analytics platforms are built and developed because of their statelessness and their ease of propagation and management. So we're developing our technology to deliver a modern data experience by enabling consumption of data services by users in a seamless, transparent, and location agnostic fashion. And then the secondary, or I should say the complement to that, is data management and portability. So the ability to move data from premises to premises, from on premises to off premises, from private cloud to public cloud and back again, but all of that being literally invisible and transparent to the user. So letting the machines take care of data locality, temporality, and things of that nature, and just allowing the end users to focus on what it is the problem they're trying to solve, and not having to worry about rotating the tires and changing the oil before their morning commute. As if I had to do that, I would never drive anywhere.
Well, it's a great example, right? And just having the fungibility to move around into these various computing environments as the technology evolves, super important. So again, they can focus on these higher order issues and priorities. All right, we're going to wrap it up with our last question, and that is, I'm going to ask each of you to paint a picture of the future. Right? What does it look like a couple of years from now? Not in a petri dish. I'm going to start with you, Nicholas, but what do you see over the horizon around the corner? What's the demand signal for Snowflake right now?
So I think where we're going to end up, Luke, is every agency, organization, every user of data out there will no longer have a source of their truth, but they'll have the source of the truth, the actual truth. Everybody's data from the subject matter expert who knows it best, combined for better data insights and decision making.
So important and a great catchphrase, if you will, but not a catchphrase about the truth versus their truth. And I think that's really important. Nick, how about at Pure Storage? Well, what's it look like? You just kind of gave us a picture of what you're going to focus on this year. What's the storage play, the DevSecOps containerization going to look like in a couple of years?
I'm glad you asked. The thing that we're seeing is that the cost of materials for advanced technologies is declining over time, and that's sort of a known. But what we've seen this year, and this is acutely relevant to us as a flash storage manufacturer, is that the cost of flash as a storage medium has now fallen below the price of disk. So what we expect to see is a literal exponential increase in the velocity with which we can move data in organizations. So what this translates to is really fast cars for world-class drivers will now be much more readily available across organizations, to the point where it won't be remarkable that you have systems that are capable of moving terabytes of data per minute or per second, and thus enabling us to get to answers faster, to derive insights faster. We've seen this happen throughout, for example, the coronavirus. The research and development required to create and monitor the deployment of inoculations to follow the disease as it progresses, as it moves across the population, et cetera, has been fundamentally impacted by the ability of organizations like the CDC to actually manipulate that data, receive that data, and derive insights from it within minutes, as opposed to what historically has been weeks and months. That's just going to become de rigueur. We're going to see it everywhere, but it's going to be driven by some fundamental shifts underneath. We live in exciting times. It is an era in which the infrastructure may actually be able to keep up with the increase of the raw materials, and that would be data in this case.
And the computing, et cetera. Very good point. With these things are merging together and in a more synergistic way, if you will. Alan, how about at Alteryx? What's it look like in a couple of years for you all?
So I really like what Taka Riga at the GAO, he's the chief data scientist there, said. That the goal of upskilling isn't to turn everyone into a data scientist, but really to create a class of general contractors who understand the power of what data has in it and can use it to improve the outcome of their work. And I think he's dead on. I think what we're going to see is knowledge workers in every agency is being armed with some better technology, moving away from a 30-year-old spreadsheet into modern tech that allows them to leverage AI, ML, automation into their processes, that not only brings them, great value in their careers, and makes the work more exciting, but makes their agencies, their organizations much more competitive. And I think that trend is simply going to accelerate. I think we'll look back 5 years from now, and this will be a core skill of every knowledge worker in the workforce.
No question about it. Nitesh, how about at the FAA? We've cited some examples of some very intense programs you have over there. What's it look like in 2 to 3 years as the chief data officer? What are you expecting to see as you look around the FAA, so to speak? What's the flying public expected to see, perhaps?
Much like some of the others have mentioned, it is what we are striving for with an FAA is where an era where information provides kind of actionable insights to detect and predict unsafe operations, right? And to improve the operational efficiency so the decision-making process for every one of these things is improving. So decision intelligence insights at the point where the decisions are made, and lots of decisions get made on a daily basis throughout the agency. So that availability of higher capability augmenting the human everywhere. So that is a broad, expansive vision. To enable that, we obviously have to get the skills of the workforce to match that, and the quality of the data they have using have to improve, and the tools that they bring to bear on the problem which we are deploying at the moment have to be up to that task. So all of this, because everything becomes possible as the cost of these MLAI things continue to drop, as the cost to make these predictive models continue to drop, these advanced tools will kind of fade into the background, and the humans will be able to make these decisions, augmenting their current decision process seamlessly. So that is what I think we are working towards. You will see things like digital twins kind of getting incorporated into key areas so that we can have more real-time actions on safety, where we kind of pre-plan those, we systematically think about the safety issues, but as time goes on, where more emergent, folks like the unmanned aircraft or uncrewed aircraft enter the airspace in greater numbers, the ability to actually understand the airspace in near real time and the safety status of the environment in near real time will become more important. So I think this is decision intelligence at the point where the decision making is important. That's where we are headed.
Fascinating, and we're all looking forward to that. Thank you, Nitesh. Tom, how about at the Navy? When a sailor, onboards at the Navy or comes out of the Navy, Naval Academy, well, what's it going to look like in 2 to 3 years? Are they going to be a data scientist? Are you going to hand them a laptop and a bunch of tools? What can we expect?
So I think it was Nicholas who kind of mentioned but so what we're striving for is a digital citizen. Everyone is a digital citizen. They understand what it means to participate in the ecosphere of the digital citizenship, right? They have some basic skills, right, where they can get after the use of data for decision-making purposes and supporting operational advantage, right? But the real key thing that we're after is this term emerged a few years or so ago. I think it came from someone named Jake, the DoD, the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, right? It was called a no new bad, right? So don't deploy anything else that makes the situation worse, right? So we're kind of pivoting to a half full mantra here in the Department of the Navy, I would say, and we're calling it embrace the new good. We're creating an environment that is better than what folks have today, and we want people to use it and they want to embrace it, right? And so we want a workforce that is enabled by data to create operational advantage and to use that information to drive the future workforce and the future warfight at the speed of mission. And so as cycle times decrease, as our adversaries get smarter and more wise, as the number of adversaries seems to be increasing, right, that we, at least from a peer adversary perspective, right, we need to be able to compete on multiple fronts, whether that's a digital front, whether that's a traditional kinetic warfight, whether that's inside the weapons engagement zone or whether that's from afar with long-range precision fires, right? We have a very broad, very diverse set of things that we need to support. And so it's really important that we can gather all that sensor data, and I think Nick mentioned it as well, right? High speed, get that data in, get it processed, push the processing to the edge. And then really what you're doing is you have some very high-skilled people that are writing, really complicated algorithms. I think in addition, I mentioned the unmanned situation that we have. There's a lot of things that we want to try and automate, but there's also some things that will forever have humans in the loop for very good safety reasons, right? And so striking that balance. And I think in the next 2 to 3 years, Luke, you mentioned, where do we see ourselves? I really see ourselves where those people that have graduated and entered there, maybe lieutenants or the majors and commanders and lieutenant commanders, right, understand the value of the data, and they're starting to feed that into the general officers and the flag officers in the department, and really trying to drive that analytics throughout the department. And I think it's going to be really exciting over the next couple of years.
Looking forward to that. Mike Horton, again, just entered on duty. Congratulations once again. What do you think it's going to look like in 2 to 3 years? What are you expecting? You're sort of laying those tracks down, doing the cataloging, et cetera. What's your goal over the next 3 years as the department matures in regards to the data cataloging, et cetera, and the use of AI and ML?
I think we're going to follow a little bit of what the Department of the Navy is doing, and no new bad, right? So right now, our data architecture is everywhere. Our hope is that in a couple of years we have a few things that are standard. For instance, no longer we will have a junk drawer, right? I'd rather a box of Legos. If you add something to the mix, it had better sort of fit what we're trying to do and have that same architecture so we can utilize that data to its maximum. Our goal, very simply, is to maximize resources, at DHS to help people. That's what we do. That's the mission of the department. And if we can respond faster, if we can make better decisions, if we're better equipped to do that mission, that's to me what data adds to that mission set. So everything we do will work toward that goal. I think in a couple of years we'll have tools that come in, we'll have data sets that come in, we'll have a capability, a fast turnaround capability on dashboards, and I'll give a couple examples. Recently, our response to COVID and vaccinations, our response to what's happening in Afghanistan, and our ability to move data at the southern border quickly, right? Those things right now are very individual. I'm hoping in a couple of years we have platforms and tools set up so those reports and that the speed to which we can use data to help that mission is faster and more resilient and more persistent. So I think it's foundational what we're doing now, but we're building toward a future where we can work together to speed the data to mission.
Fantastic, and I really do appreciate it on behalf of every American citizen. We appreciate everything that all of you are doing to keep the country safe and let us all prosper. I'd like to thank again today's guests for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us for this program. I'd like to thank all the sponsors for supporting us on the show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.